everybody. I'm your host, Tamera Gaede, Director of Collin County Sales for Lawyers Title. I am super stoked about the guys I have on the show with me today. A lot of you will already know them as the ones who established the only real estate group worth being a part of that has about 6,000 members now, and the only real estate podcast worth listening to that has 124 episodes out now. If you haven't heard their podcast, make sure that you go and check it out. The content is fantastic, and I guarantee that you'll learn something from these guys. Thank you, Matt, Nick, and Brian for being on the show with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. We used to shoot the podcast up here, but we never got to come in the fancy room.
This is the fanciest room in the studio.
Look at all the studio audience in the background.
I know, right?
Yeah.
This is the Oprah room, so I always feel like we're going to have a little bit of a counseling session.
Yeah, right.
Come in here. Someone might cry. I'm going to give away something.
I like it.
This is the only other real estate podcast worth listening to,
Yes.
by the way.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Official endorsement.
I love it.
Exactly.
I do like
love
the
it.
name too. I think it's hilarious.
Well, and I've been watching you guys, obviously I've known you guys for years,
Yeah.
and we did a lot of business together before I moved over to Lawyers, and then you were already clients, so there you go.
Sure.
And thank you very much for being loyal to us with that, with your business as well and your partnership. We appreciate that so much. And this is the time for gratitude, so there you go.
Exactly.
Thanks.
We'll take it.
Yeah. Keep it coming, please.
Why don't we kick off the conversation? I'm one of those that likes to just get into the meat of it.
Please.
So I pulled a stat from Inman that said, according to Cisco, by 2022, video will make up 82% of all consumer internet traffic. That's a pretty big deal, I think.
Yeah.
82% is
Yeah.
huge. And so I wanted to bring you guys in today to talk about how you guys are doing your business development online, but more specifically, your branding efforts and where you guys are taking what you're doing, the direction that you're going with it. Why don't we kind of back up a second, though, and tell everybody, I want you guys to talk about your backstory, how you three came together and came up with the idea for the things that you're doing now. Who wants to take the lead on that?
I mean, I think I'll take it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so there was in our office, we were all at the same Keller Williams office, and there was a gentleman in there that was like, hey, I got some new fancy equipment. It's in the garage. We want to start shooting some podcasts there and some videos. And I was like, okay, cool. So he's like, why don't you come over on a Saturday?
Was that JD?
That was JD.
Yeah.
Right? So I show up to his garage, and he's like, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. Like, you brought me into this, right? So what we started doing then, I was like, I don't like, my style was never I don't like to talk to a camera. I can't talk to a wall and have a conversation probably the way Matt can, right? As you'll see in some of his social media, he can just talk to that camera and just unload. And so we start making some phone calls, and, I think I called you first.
Yeah.
Stephen Crawford.
Yep.
And did we call Brian, or did Brian come last?
I think you were.
I think I just showed
It was like
up.
the next one. I remember I sat up there and messed around with Crawford for an
That's
episode
right.
one time, and then that was the only thing I had done
Yes.
before we started all doing it.
Yes, it was me, you, and Crawford, and we were just kind of shooting it, just throwing it out there, seeing what happened, and it was cool, right? And so that next week we did it again, and Matt and I showed up, and Crawford was probably busy, something like that, and so we called Brian.
Yeah.
And Brian shows up, and it went really, really well. Like, we just were throwing around what was working in our businesses, what we were struggling with. And we're like, do we want to do this on the reg? Right?
Yep.
And they're like, well, all right, what will we call it? So we started throwing some names out. And I think I just threw out something like, well, let's just call it just BSing, the only real estate podcast worth listening to, because this would be the best one.
And everybody was like, light bulb.
Yeah.
Like that fits us
rad.
perfectly.
Yeah. 100%.
So we started shooting in that garage, and then ultimately, as it evolved, we wanted it to be video, right? We didn't. Podcast was starting to come up, and it was just the audio version. But we are all very vain people, and we like for other people to see us. So we're like, might as well just also make this a video concept.
Yep.
And it came really naturally for a couple of reasons. Like, one, we were all at different points in our own careers. Like, we were all running our own teams and businesses, trying to build them. And we're kind of all at different levels of experience and seeing different levels of success. So, like, we're kind of all had, like, different perspectives on things. And then the other kind of natural aspect was like, this is us all the time. Like, us doing the podcast, I think that first podcast that we were all sitting there, it was like 3 hours that we sat there and talked, right? And the reason that this all happened so organically and what we tell people is like actionable advice now is like, you've got to, if you're going to go out and do something like a podcast, it better be something that you would talk about even if it wasn't a podcast. You know what I mean? Like, we drive our wives and significant others crazy because this is what we do. This is us all day. Like, we go to dinner together and we're only going to talk about real estate. Like, it's just, it's part of it's our lifeblood and it's part of our relationship. So like, it never really ends. That's why 125 episodes, we'll shoot our 125th today. Like, we don't do a ton of show prep or anything anymore. It's just like stuff we'd already been talking about earlier in the week. Let's just turn on the cameras and keep talking about that because this is what we do all the time.
Yeah. But I think that's part of what makes it stay real, right? And you guys are vulnerable about what has worked, what hasn't worked, that you've had failures, you've had successes. You know, that was one of the things that I noticed in kind of listening to some of your back episodes. You know, Matt, you've always been very raw about, you know, what your progression in this industry has looked like. And I think that makes it more relatable, of course, because I feel like, you know, most of the time when people get on shows like this, they put on their best dress and they put on their best show, and it isn't really, it becomes something that isn't them. And that's something Kyle talks about all the time too, is your people already know you and love you. You need to be you.
Yeah. Oh, no, I did dress up today. I put the joggers back in the drawer.
These are nice shorts.
And wore my nice shorts because it's 80 degrees in December.
I showed up this morning. I was like, I almost said something like, "Thanks for dressing up for me, Matt."
But I think that's the cool thing is, right? Like, you talk about it being so relatable, and we found this with so much of the other content we've done, is that people are going to be attracted to who they're attracted to, right? Like, we made it, especially now with Nick being a different brokerage than Brian and I being business partners, we said we were never going to use the podcast as a way to like pimp our own businesses, like individually or recruit agents or whatever. But there's no doubt been people have come into our worlds individually and as a whole solely from that. And I say it all the time.
100%.
The reason it's so great is because it protects my soft little heart. People who don't like our content just leave.
Yeah.
They just leave and leave us alone. We don't have haters. Nobody leaves us crappy comments, right? They just go away and they never bother us anymore, which is great. Now I can just focus on the people who know and like me and trust me, right?
Yeah.
And it's a great medium for that.
And you guys started the Facebook group too, so that was just a kind of an organic thing that you guys started as well.
We were in his backyard drinking White Claws.
I was this close to bringing White Claw today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a drunken night at my house where we were like, you know, we wanted to capture it, right? So the whole idea with the podcast was never to sell anything. We wanted to real, raw, and relatable. We never sales pitch. We tried to do some coaching, and it just wasn't in our forte at that time. You know, just because the businesses were really taking off, we didn't have the energy and effort. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to make a Facebook group where people could come and just share, right? And we could continue sharing ours, and it also helped us get our message out from the podcast in itself, right? So that's why we started that, and I would say that a lot of what we do on the podcast also transfers into our own businesses, right? What you see on the podcast, we're testing out, you know, video, we're testing out Facebook groups, we're testing out any marketing ideas in our real businesses, and it coincides with the podcast and the group itself.
Yeah.
So I remember when you were starting, you were trying to get people to join the group, right? And you had contests. So you got I think I won a Visa gift card I never got.
We gave away. But then we had people.
I was in charge of delivering the first place prize.
Let me back up. I told y'all not to give it to me.
Okay.
That I do remember.
There were some people who didn't pick their stuff
I
up.
want to make sure that I was clear.
Okay.
No, that's it. I do remember this. Because I was hand delivering these contest prizes. I remember this. Yeah.
I said don't even worry about it. I'll tell you why. Because here's the thing, I'm invested in what you guys are doing and what realtors are doing, right? So I see value in what you guys are doing. I want to help you build it because, again, going back to what you said, it's not about me trying to get a new client out of it, but it will happen because I'm invested in what my clients are doing, what my people are doing, right?
Yeah.
So
can we do a quick shameless plug real fast?
Absolutely.
Right.
Can't wait.
We are bringing back a contest.
Okay.
Right. We have all three partnered up on a new business venture, a property management company. So this is going out to all DFW realtors. So, you know, property management is awful, right? We see the complaints. So while you're watching this, come join the group because there will be another contest that we're running for our property management company that we just launched. So we are bringing back that contest.
Okay.
Maybe you could win another.
If this airs in January, it might already be going on. So go to the group right now.
Well, look, I'll tell you,
already
if it's a
behind.
contest, I'm going to win it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
how I roll. But I don't need you to give me a gift. My gift is the fact that, we're all investing in helping each other, right? And that's just kind of the benefit
That's
of
the
it.
thing for me about the video that makes it so awesome and it's not just like the podcast. I think the podcast for all three of us got us really comfortable in front of the camera. But Nick as an individual does something completely different, right? Brian doesn't really do a ton of individual video, period, right? Like that's just not
Support everyone.
Yeah. But
You need to start doing eating and working out videos.
he was doing that when he was training for his Ironman. But what he does do is he's behind the scene on all the vlog stuff, right? Like we've got my guy here behind the scenes, like recording stuff for our thing. Brian essentially is kind of executive producer, the eyeballs on that, giving us ideas. Hey, this cut's way too long. That's whatever, right? So like all of us have these different skill sets in what we bring to video. And like I said, different people are going to, an agent reached out yesterday who was thinking about partnering with us solely from the Sirhan videos, right? Like the vlog stuff, they're just interested in that part of it. So everybody finds their niche in different ways with the video. And I think that's what we found to be so awesome about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't, you talk about this sometimes. You're the operations guy, right? You're all about the procedures and what makes the operation tick. And so how do you add into what they're doing?
Yeah, it's like, this is a long day for me because we're doing 2 podcasts today. I am like the prototypical introverted extrovert. Like I'll have to take a nap after the next podcast. Right? But I enjoy this is what my forte is conceptualizing and helping execute on robust systems, And obviously working with guys like him who are the most disorganized human beings on the face of the earth.
That's a fact.
Like my job is to help all the stuff that's in his crazy head actually get out there in some sort of systematic fashion, right? So whether that is creating, working with Jesse, his guy, on creating actual, automations to help certain pieces of content get to fruition and certain timelines and things like that. Like what I don't think people really, or what I say people maybe take for granted when they see great, consistent content creation efforts is the operational side that goes into the background, right? Like it's really easy to pull up any social media platform and say, I want to do that. And what you don't see, it's the same with doing a podcast, same with what we're doing sitting right here. Like, what's the average podcast only makes like 11 episodes?
11,
like that?
Yeah. They say 17 is where you got real consistent.
Yeah, and it's not because sitting here talking is difficult. Like we all speak English and we have ideas, right? It's the back end that's actually, you got to be disciplined about it. You got to have systems around it. You got to have an operational approach to actually get your product, as it were, out to your audience in a systematic fashion. So that's my job is to help support people in building those systems that take their amazing ideas and actually get them out there.
Well, and there is a challenge to creating content that people want to watch.
Yeah.
100%. There is a challenge to that.
100%.
I do a monthly mastermind, and the first time I did, I felt this huge, heavy weight to make sure, because I've captured these top producing individuals and I've asked them to take an hour of their time and sit down with me and let's have a conversation about what's going on. Same thing with you guys. I mean, I told you I had some pressure about today. I wanted to make sure you guys are high producing individuals. You never want to waste anybody's time. It needs to be engaging and creating things that people want to be a part of and people want to listen to. And there is a responsibility that comes with that I think people you think you show up and you look good and let's talk about something and we don't know. But I planned out what we were going to talk about today, right?
Sure. And I say this all the time. Like, I think that fundamentally the best songs that have ever been written have never been heard because, and the best content that's ever been created, for the most part, won't ever get seen. Because there's so much that needs to happen to reach your audience on the back end, And I think that's where we underestimate a lot of time. And a lot of it's just resilience, right? Like doing a podcast for 3.5 years now, it's not easy. Like we're busy people. We got other stuff we got going on, A lot of it is just, it's the same maniacal commitment to your outcome that we have in our real estate businesses.
By the way, it doesn't pay very well.
Yeah,
No.
It doesn't.
For a long time, we paid into it.
I mean, it doesn't pay you to do it right, but there's huge dividends from doing
That's
it.
what it is.
Your
Absolutely.
return on investment doesn't come in the form of actual money in your pocket, especially right in the beginning.
Which
shows up in different ways.
Yeah, which goes into branding in itself, right? Where with our podcast, look, it cost us, when we were doing it even in the studio, it was costing us thousands of bucks, right? And we were doing it for the longer version. It was a long-term play from a branding perspective to get our names, continue to get our names out there in the marketplace, not just here in DFW, but out there in the United States. And so as that started happening, then the residual effect starts building up, right? It's that compounding snowball effect. The same thing when it goes to branding, where most agents fail or they give up too soon, right? They either start doing some videos, like they go listen to Coach Kyle Draper, they start doing, and the results aren't there, right? It'd be like working out for a week and I'm like, man, I didn't put on any muscle. I didn't lose any weight. You know what? This stuff doesn't work. I'm just going to go back to just eating CCs.
Oh, yeah. You got to love the New Year's resolution people when you're working out, bro.
Oh, man. The gym is so crowded on January 2nd, man.
But you're right. I mean, and we're going to talk about branding. That's kind of why I brought you guys in here for today. And so kind of that progresses into my next question, which is, how do you become a person of interest? How did you gain interest in what you were doing online to make you want to keep doing it? What were your dividends, and what made you want, what made you a person of interest or people of interest?
It happened for me accidentally. Even before I met these guys, I was pretty active on Facebook, right? And I just probably would be considered oversharing, right? Like at first, I'm sure it was just probably too much. But what I found that with the audience that gravitates towards my personal stuff, they like exactly what you brought up. They appreciate the perspective and the vulnerability, right? For me, that was always really easy to do. And it was easy to share on Facebook, right?
But that's hard for a lot of people.
It's very hard. And I talk to agents all the time.
Yourself,
it really is
hard.
And I don't expose everything. I still got dark skeletons like everybody else, right? But I'm willing to go out there and share some stuff that other people would be really uncomfortable sharing. So there's an immediate bond when somebody almost has a crystal ball with you emotionally, and they're speaking to something that you think you only feel, and then they're articulating it, and you're like, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm feeling. I get those kinds of messages and text messages from certain pieces of content more consistently than anything else.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Even with the most recent stuff that we're doing, right? Like all the vlog stuff is really putting us up. Trying to put together a 7-minute video of yourself talking about something that matters is unbelievably difficult to do.
I think it is.
It's so unbelievably difficult to do. And I feel like we're putting out solid content, right? But even I look at YouTube. I only have 300 subscribers on YouTube. I'm like, what in the hell?
Yeah.
This stuff's awesome. Where are all the people? And they probably won't show up for another 24 months. It's just a grind, right? And that's the part of it that I've learned from these guys, because that's what they do really, really well. I'm the emotional person, but looking at how consistency is showing up in their lives in so many other ways makes me look around and be like, all right, just stick with it. You've got the right people. You got Jesse running the camera. You got Brian giving you examples. You got Nick's brain in the room, right? Like just stick with it until stuff starts to happen. And it does, right? Like over time, it jumps off in certain different ways.
I think it's a big deal that people, reach out to you offline individually and just say, hey, this piece that you did really affected me. That tells me that you guys are people of interest, right? So the podcast, the Facebook page, what else do you guys do? How did you establish becoming that person of interest? You got anything you want to throw in, Brian or Nick?
I mean, I think it's the consistency. I mean, you don't become I hate to use it. Person of interest just sounds really weird.
I know. It sounds weird to say about yourself.
Sounds like a murder case.
Yes, it does. Maybe award-winning person of interest. Right?
And that was in my script here too.
Right.
I knew it was a big deal to you guys to say that you are award-winning.
We're having fun with that bit.
I also know something else that's a big deal to you. I did your 5-star review.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Somebody's listening.
I know, right?
But I would say that it's a couple of different things. That one, consistency, and it's the feedback in the marketplace, right? We're not talking at people, we're talking with them, and
that's a big deal. What you just said.
Yes, right. And something we've always talked about in our businesses, and something that, I mean, Matt and Brian's business has surpassed mine in less than 2 years, right? And it's amazing what they've built. And something that we've talked about is your message has to match the marketplace. And something that our podcast, I believe, does really, really well is that it doesn't go. We struggle with this because Brian's a high-level thinker, and some of our disagreements we have where we have to tailor. We've got to mute him sometimes because he'll go so high level that we're like, dude, people are going to gloss over. Mm-hmm. And we have to bring Brian back down because we have to talk at what people are experiencing right now, right? And everyone has in their business and even in their personal lives, they've got problems, right? And so we're just exposing the problems that we're going through, and it makes it relatable. That's it. Once you start doing that, and then how maybe to fix it or something that we've implemented that works, that I think starts becoming more that person of interest because they're like, all right, these guys are willing to share. Matt's the most vulnerable one out of all of us. And so he's willing to share what's going on in his life, how he's improving upon it, maybe how he has slipped back on some things again. He's the most relatable person on that show, and probably that I really know.
You never told me that's my face for it. That's very nice.
You're welcome.
Yeah, but I think that's why it all works so well. Is I know we're just pimping the property management company, but you can't come on our show and say we're trying to sell you something, right? We've had people on our show who we would probably look back on and maybe skip it if we could do it over again, because their message isn't clear and coherent. It's not coming from contribution, right? Like, I don't know if that was our original intention, because we did try to start the coaching company and do some other things. But that's because we're entrepreneurs and we're implementers, right? Like, we're going to try and find new stuff to do.
Sure.
But there's no part of the show or anything that any of us do from a social media perspective where we are looking to be rewarded. Like you said, we know the clients and the rewards will come through consistently just coming from contribution. Like-minded people will find you. And I think that's what a lot of agents or people in general do wrong with video is it's hard to be clear about it at first. That's something they always tell you is to get clear about it. That's almost impossible right at first. But you do have to be consistent, and you do have to come from a space where it is solely about helping or contributing to a group of people, not about getting something back, because I think it's really transparent.
And maybe not be a flip-flopper.
Yeah.
Meaning, how many times have you seen someone talk out of both sides of their mouth on video or online, and you lose credibility? I don't think any one of us has been a flip-flopper in a sense of what we put out there. Or if we've had said something that we thought was working, then we retract it later and say, we thought this was the angle.
Yeah, own it.
And we own that, right? Where, it's all about creating authenticity and credibility.
Yeah, that consistency aspect, I mean, they both just mentioned it as well. Like I use, person of interest and personal brand or whatever you want to call it interchangeably, right? Like everybody already has a personal brand. It's whatever you are, or whatever you like, whatever's interesting about you, whatever attracts people to you or whatever. I would say two big things for us that really, that I think are actionable pieces of advice. This is going to sound weird, but I say don't try too hard. What I mean by that is, imagine anything else we did in our real estate business if we approached it the same way that a lot of people approach video. Like if I came in one day and I lead generated and didn't set an appointment, I was like, well, that doesn't work. Like, and I just tried something completely different the next day, I would never get any traction whatsoever.
Sure.
That's a lot of times what we do with like content creation or trying to get exposure for our personal brand is like, we want things to be perfect right out of the gate, and so we try to do them like right. And then when they don't get the result we want right away, we're automatically in pivot mode, and we're like, what's the next thing we should be trying, or what's the next platform we should be using, or what's the next idea? Like we'll spend hours upon hours masterminding around the top 50 videos, ideas I want to do, but then when number one doesn't work, we're like, we got to torch this whole thing and try again. Some totally different. The podcast for us has helped grow our brands or persons of interest or whatever, because we don't really try too hard to be anything different than we are. And that's exactly what they're speaking about before, is having the resilience to be consistent and show up every time, and no matter what we're feeling, no matter what's going on, no matter whatever, like we're there every Wednesday podcast. And Matt is exactly who he's going to be in real life on the podcast. Me and Nick are exactly like, if you want to talk about robots and existential thoughts or whatever, like I'm going to be your guy. And that's why certain people will connect with me directly. You know, certain people will connect with Matt or Nick directly, because we're all distinct human beings.
100%.
And we don't ever really try to be anybody else. We don't try to do things right. We just do what we do that's as pure to us as we could possibly be, and we do it really consistently, even when it feels like it's going nowhere sometimes.
And you brought up video right in the beginning. So by 2022, it's going to be majority video, which we talked about on whatever episode it was. It was actually, I think, in the studio where we brought it up that video, one, we wanted video in our brand, in our messaging, because it's going to be SEO searchable, relatable. Like it's taking the audio, putting it in more transcribing transcripts. And so that becomes video and audible starts becoming searchable in search engines. So we were just doing this out of understanding, getting ahead of the curve, like Gary Vaynerchuk was talking about, right? So, where most people, again, they hold themselves back because they think they don't look good for camera. They don't like the way their voice sounds. I mean, all of us probably don't like the way we look at times or the way we sound at times. And Matt shows up in this on listing appointments. Right? I show up like this every day. I'm uniformed every day. Brian changes whatever he's wearing.
But
I tried to have a video with a realtor. She's like, can I get my hair colored first? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No. no.
Well, and the really awesome thing I think about video as a medium is you can connect with people at a much higher rate. Like if you think about what we do in our industry, right? Like we're either on the phone or we're texting and emailing people.
Yeah.
When you're texting and emailing, it's just black and white words. There's so much lost in communication. How many times you got a text message that a wrong piece of punctuation changes the entire meaning of what you were trying to say, right? Even on the phone, you still lose, while you get the tonality, you still lose the body language and the connection. Video allows you to be a real person in front of a ton of people with your body language, right? I don't even know what I'm doing with my hands. It's just always what they do, right? Like, but it's the same thing I'd be doing if I was sitting in front of you at a table, right? We'd be having the same type of conversation. And video allows you to do massive connection at a much, much more, connected rate than you would be able to do it through email or text message or just calling people, right?
Yeah, but I talk to realtors all of the time. I have one example. We had a one-on-one with Coach Kyle. She went out and did 4 videos, got 3 listing appointments, and never did another video.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like,
Wow.
That's just real estate agents in general.
It's,
That's just, I mean,
I know, right? It seems so obvious.
I know. That's that whole like some people are hunters and some people are like I don't know. Somebody said it the other day when they were talking about love people. Some people just love the kill, right? They love the lead generation. They like the immediate gratification of it, right? Some people are really deep into the follow-up type of thing. And there's some people who are just tinkerers, right? Like, oh, that idea worked. Now what else can I do that'll work? Instead of just doubling down or tripling down the thing that you know. Yes.
why did you stop doing it?
Yeah.
Welcome to our world, man. Welcome to our world.
There is so much hesitation around realtors and video. There's so much apprehension and nervousness, and I can't do it, and I'm going to look stupid, and all of the things, right?
The real reason, or one of the reasons, there's so much hesitance with real estate professionals in video is the same reason real estate agents will keep the same headshot for 30 years because that was the best version of them. People want to put out the best version of themselves. That's not really what's sticky. That's not really what people gravitate towards. Like the reason that people love reality TV is because people love the imperfections of it, right? If you can get over the idea that everything doesn't have to be perfect all the time, like it feels weird at first. Probably don't feel as weird for Matt. He's used to being vulnerable in every sense. It was really, really tough for me.
But for us,
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, there are episodes of the podcast I want to go back and erase from the universe.
You said that.
Like, even still, but they just have to live there. And I wouldn't change where we're at now for anything. So it was all worth it, and getting over that mindset that things got to be perfect all the time. That's the most liberating thing you can do for your ability to grow your brand.
So how did you guys shift your focus when you started doing this? Because, being really focused on your real estate business, the mechanics of your business, getting yourselves to a higher level production, creating your teams, all of that, putting in your systems, your processes. Good Lord, if I have to talk about CRM one more time, that sort of thing. Like, how did you guys find the time or shift your efforts? What did you put into place so that you could do that? Because this stuff is time consuming, like you said.
Yeah. I think the podcast itself realistically is not insanely time consuming other than the time we spend recording it, right? Like we have got that pretty dialed in now at this point. But yeah, when we were doing it up here, there was drive time, there was finances involved, there was all of that stuff. I think one of the things that Brian and I did really well was we just, we're all friends outside of here. We travel together, we do things together, right? Like we don't just stop talking when we leave.
Yeah, I heard one podcast where you were mad because you didn't get invited to dinner or something.
Yeah, it happens all like whatever happens, right? Like
let's not bring that up.
I know, right?
We just swung under the bridge.
We just got over it.
Yeah, we just got over it. And again, that also speaks to how different I am from everybody too, because I get my feelings, I get butthurt about stuff. But Brian and I really just had a wish list of things we wanted to happen. Jesse standing here with a camera has only been happening in our world for about 4 months.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But we had a wish list of like, dude, how do we get somebody to follow us around with a camera? You know what I mean? Like that was something that we just kind of said we wanted to take it. And it's been that way the whole time, right? Like I'm in the process right now of trying to find somebody to help me manage this absurd amount of content that I now have and need to disperse to 9 different platforms, right? Because that goes back to what Brian was talking about. It's exhausting.
It is a lot.
Right? You have to be thoughtful. You have to be genuine, but you have to be intentional about grabbing stuff. Like it's just,
well, every
it's a
platform
lot.
wants something different.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it's the evolution of this industry and the evolution of what consumers are wanting. So when I got in the business in 2005, video was not a thing, right? I could go post on Craigslist and generate 6 figures off of just Craigslist posting. And so from that, and then I could make cold calls. Well, that still works today. How many times do you actually answer your phone when it's a number that's not saved in your phone?
Yeah, contact.
Right?
It's
Almost.
So-
well, my work phone, yes, but my personal, no.
Yes, right.
Zippo.
And so what was working back then is not going to work as well and efficiently today, and it's not going to get you where you want to go in the future. And so you have to start implementing and evolving your style of business to what the consumer wants. Right? We were talking about on one of the podcasts. The Zillow, Rich Barton. Rich Barton talked about why Zillow even started was not to disrupt the real estate industry. He was looking for houses, and he noticed how broken the data was, and he just wanted to house it all in one place, and you give it away for free, and then he monetized it on the back end. Right? Consumers want things for free. How many things have started out for free, and then all of a sudden this company is blown up? Yep. And worth billions or trillions of dollars, right? And so what needs to happen is we have to start matching what the consumer wants, not what we want. We have to match their needs, their wants, their desires. That's it.
Yep.
I think even beyond that, to talk about how this kind of got off the ground and why we've been able to do it for this long and kind of, see a lot of cool things come into our world that really weren't there when we first started. Like, time blocking the stuff that's important to you really should be the easiest part. The reality is, like, you've got enough, like, there's a lot that goes into making all this stuff happen. And there's a lot of stuff that we do that I would say most of us do during the day that's not hyper productive, that we feel like it makes us really busy, or we feel like it's paying off, or we feel like it has to be done or whatever. And a lot of us we're just idle a lot of the time too. Like the reason that we've been able to kind of make a lot of this stuff happen is we just showed up and made it really, really important to us, even when it didn't feel like it was going anywhere. And to that end is, like, when you start to see progress with it, you start to look over the fence at, like, everybody else is doing it at a higher level and all the things you need to be doing. And then you get discouraged a lot of times. Like, we didn't always have an awesome dude following us around with high-end equipment to just document our entire lives, right? We wanted it, but we also didn't go out and, like, blow a bunch of money hiring someone right away, or we also didn't quit because it wasn't happening right away either,
but we also
right?
we also have thrown out there, should we keep doing this? Right? There has been, it's not always been skyrocketed up. There's been times where we sat around at lunch and, like, let's just end it, because we weren't on the same page at times in terms of how to monetize it. Or one person like Brian, let's be real, Brian does most of the back end of the work. We are not great at this. We're not back-end people, right? And so, it can be overwhelming. And then you just have to, again, we are all consistent though. If there's a theme of today's show, it's that consistency part where we hear it all the time. But as soon as you keep that consistency, the compounding effect wins. It happens.
Yep.
You won't lose, guaranteed. We can put a guarantee on it that if you do something, if you make a live video every single day reading a children's book, guarantee you will still get real estate sales from it.
That's super true, and that goes for everything that you're trying to build. Like, that's one thing that the three of us have in common is don't come to us with your excuses about why you can't get stuff done, right? I've done podcast episodes from the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I had to zoom in with my freaking laptap with like 1 bar of service.
I feel so sorry for you that day.
Because it was Wednesday and it was 3 o'clock, and that's what we do on Wednesdays at 3 o'clock.
I feel sorry for us.
And it was garbage too. There was like a 30-second delay, so like I would say something and like it wouldn't show up to. It was a disaster, right? But we never made excuses for why we couldn't do stuff. And like, the live video or just creating consistent video content is the same way. Like, you can always find some reason where, like, the diet starts on Monday, right? You just can't come to us with those excuses. Like, that's one thing we don't make is reasons why we can't do this stuff.
Well, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but because I do have some other questions I want to ask you guys. But, I think it's important to note that you didn't go from 0 to 100 and skip 1 through 99, okay? You guys had already established your real estate businesses. You already had a reputation here locally. And so that's what catapulted you to go to this next step, right? And I think that's where sometimes we get lost, is we see what you guys are doing and we're like, oh my God, I gotta do this. But you have to establish your real estate business. You got to start with baby steps. Just do a video. Do one. Do 1 a week. Set your goals for what you're going to do if you want to have this kind of exposure. And you need to know that you need to want to have this kind of
Yeah,
exposure.
I think people. That's probably one of the biggest mechanisms that kind of drive people towards failure is they want it all right at the beginning, right? Like if you've never really even done video before and you're about to go drop a whole bunch of money on a big podcast setup, like start over, bro.
Right.
There's just like, this takes a while. It's the same thing as like we listen to, I listen to sports radio sometimes on my way into the office and everybody thinks like, oh, I could sit and talk about the Cowboys for 2 hours a day. No, you can't, bro. Not like they can.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for decades and they're
Yeah.
better than you are. That's why every caller doesn't sound the same as the host because that guy's a professional, you know what I mean? And so getting that experience, getting those repetitions, getting yourself prepared to kind of get to the next level is so important. It's not, and not trying to skip every step along the way.
Or they stop because they don't have the business experience that we did, right? So there's going to be people that would listen to this and be like, well, of course they're good at this, or of course they have something to talk about. They had been in the business a while. They were successful for a while, right? And so, one of our mentors talked about there's two things you can do. You can be an originator of content or a collaborator of content, meaning you could come on others. You could start your show, but bring persons of interest on there. You could bring us on, right? And all you have to do is start asking us questions, and that starts to elevate your brand. That starts to elevate your status, right? There are people with zero business that starts from zero, starts interviewing, more influential people in their community. Now they're the experts, right? And they didn't originate content. They just collaborated with content.
Oh, I don't originate any content. I'm a really good interviewer.
That's good. That's
it. You're documenting
okay.
your journey of becoming an expert when you
Yes.
do it that way. You're building your credibility essentially on the fly by absorbing the information of your guests. It's a great way to do it.
That's the other thing too. The cool thing about being in the interviewer position is you get to ask all the questions you want. Like when we've had like Tariq El Moussa and like other people on, I've gotten the biggest nuggets from being able to sit back and listen to other people talk. Where it's just the three of us. Again, we spend so much time together. It's not like we don't drop bombs on each other every once in a while, but like for the most part, when you get somebody new in the room and hear their perspective, it's totally different, right? And I get more actionable stuff from that than I probably do when it's just the three of us chopping it up.
Well,
right?
that leads us in. Let's bust into your Ryan interview,
That's pretty sweet.
So, quote, I don't wake up a broker, I wake up a brand.
Every day that guy.
That was a big deal.
It was huge.
How did you get that interview, first of all?
So he's
Inquiring minds.
yeah. So he's. I mean, like
First off, who was it? You just used the word Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just assume everybody
Yeah.
does,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. So Jesse and I flew up over the week before Thanksgiving to have an hour-long sit-down with him. That's part of because look, you talk about what it takes. I now am spending money on brand coaching, right? Like part of all of that Sirhan thing is part of a larger branding collaboration where, I mean, I'm putting together press kits now and making lifestyle photo shoots, and it's just the silliest stuff,
That's all your life.
right? Like it's
Yeah.
the silliest stuff. But
Just wait. I want to do some stuff with you that's going to come.
I'm
we wanna
all
do.
about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Well,
like,
and seeing your Real Producers cover is what won you guys an award. That's why.
it was so good, right?
Photo was taken right out there.
Yeah, photos taken right here in the parking lot. Yeah.
Cool.
But there was an opportunity to do something like that either via Zoom or to fly to New York. And right, like that, it goes back to what Brian talked about. That wasn't like a zero cost video. You know what I mean? Like 2 people flew to New York.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there was time involved. There was all kinds of stuff. But to be able to capture something like that lends almost immediate credibility to a whole lot of stuff you're doing, right? People see Ryan Sirhan on TV and then see me sitting across the table from him, and they ask questions like you just asked, like, how in the hell did he pull that off? Right? Somebody in Nick's world even looked at Nick and was like, what?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, so it has such far-reaching effects to be able to sit down with somebody like that. And then on top of it, it was just gold. I mean, I've watched his interview with other people. I watched one today in his stories. And I feel like I got an amazingly candid version of him compared to what I normally see.
Well, and I love that he was from Texas. So he like totally related to your market, where you came from.
And that whole thing is a perfect example of how little prep I do and how disorganized I am. That thing about being from Texas is literally like in the first chapter of his book, which I've never even
He
opened.
mentions it immediately.
Yeah,
You should talk to Brian before you
Brian knew. Well, I did because there's a couple of questions I asked that came directly from him, right? Like if you watch the video leading up to the Sirhan interview where we were talking about New York, I even say like Brian and I were sitting down trying to figure out what we wanted to get out of this experience, right?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just branding for me. Right, our team has benefited from it. Right, just the knowledge stuff. Everybody gets a little bit of juice when they see something like that.
Sure.
And like I said, he was just so good. It was giving up so much. I thought really, really great info.
But he's obviously a brand, right?
He's doing it.
And that's the next. That is what you guys I feel like you already are a brand, whether or not you feel like you are or not.
Yeah.
I think you are.
When it
And
comes
It doesn't reach as far as his
it
does.
doesn't reach, sure, but you're going to get there.
Yeah.
But that his
So, it
mindset
about
is
thinking
so
bigger.
good around it. What he
Yeah.
does so well, and that goes back to just that line. Like, I don't wake up a broker, I wake up a brand. Like, the reality is, whatever you do in your business, people should already assume that you're good at it, right? Like Ryan Serhant doesn't need to prove to people that he knows how to sell real estate, right? And maybe he did in the past, but even, real estate businesses are a great example. Like, if you're a licensed real estate agent and you have people in your world that know, like, and trust you, they're going to want to work with you, right? We work really, really hard to build ourselves up as experts. What Ryan Serhant does really well is show the world his authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And his brand is, yes, of course, I'm the best broker in Manhattan, or in New York City now. He lives in Brooklyn, I think. Is what he is striving for to accomplish in his business. And his brand is, I'm me, Ryan Serhant, and that's what I'm going to accomplish.
Period.
I'm not trying to convince you that I already am the best broker in New York. I'm exposing myself for my genuine person, my person of interest, who I am, and like and trust me now, so you should work with me, and so and allow me to help you buy or sell real estate, right? Like, you already are your brand. Being the most organic and intentional version of yourself. That's what people like him do very, very well.
And I think to Brian's point, I've gotten to the point now where I don't post about my transactional real estate business anymore.
Thank God.
Right? Like you don't ever see just sold. Like you'll see a picture from a closing table.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe you'll see something up in my stories, but I'm not really talking about the everybody knows I do real estate because I still talk about it in so many ways and it's out there for people to consume in so many different formats. But I'm not really being like, hey, 123 Main Street sold today,
That's a
right?
great point. I don't see that from any of y'all.
No, because again, it's people know what we do. They're subtly reminded in everything we do every day because we're still sharing successes about the magazine, the team, right? Like certain client, whatever it is, right? Like Brian shares our numbers a lot. So the people still know what we're doing. You don't have to smack them in the face with it. I think that's what I go to real estate agents' pages, and this was something that Coach Kyle told us, and actually I think Ryan Stewman or somebody said this early on. Somebody was talking about, would you go and watch a channel that was just 100% commercials? Of course you wouldn't. Go on your Instagram feed and scroll through it right now. Right? Like there's a sponsored ad every 5 ads.
Mm-hmm.
You should be your real true self 80% of the time, and then remind people you sell real estate the other 20%. And I go to a lot of people's social media and it's just all all real estate stuff. Nobody wants to watch
There's like
that.
4,500 of you. Okay?
Yeah,
You have
100%.
no idea how much
It's a beat.
I see of we close this and close this one and then congratulations on
Boring,
this award
man.
and that award. I'm like, what is that award?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boring.
Yep.
I've just become a resharer of my people. That's it. I
I think that's great though, because you allow them to piggyback off the audience that you have too from an exposure standpoint.
So it's you're 100% correct on all of it. And Coach Kyle, has he been on here
Yeah.
as well? So he's been on here, he's been on our show twice.
3 times if we count the debacle.
Oh, yeah. Video you guys did.
We erased that from our mind.
Yeah.
'Cause we weren't there.
Because you weren't there.
So that was your mess.
That is my mess up. We left it up too.
I mean, that's what he talked about, is just showing, like, just getting rid of that, because no one wants to see it.
Yep.
Right? No one wants to it's just like no one wants to see food photos or working out photos every day.
No.
No.
I can't imagine.
I got one. He takes pictures at the gym almost every week, and multiple times a week, of him standing in front of the mirror at the gym going like this. And I'm
It's
like, dude,
weird.
It's weird.
Oh man, it's so boring too.
Should we
right?
start that though?
We should. All
could.
3 of us.
Yes.
All go.
See, I do this bit though because this is what else I'm gonna say. Like every Monday is squat day.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing when I post my 15-second picture of the squat. I do it on purpose, and I get people clowning me for it. And it's just become a bit, right?
yeah,
Like
created interest.
it's created a
Usually
bit.
it's me 100% clowning.
Oh, it's almost dude. I get a lot of flack for those.
Yeah.
Because it's always a butt pic. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm doing the whole thing. So whatever.
So we are going to have to probably wrap up here pretty quick, but I do have another question I want to ask you before we do this. So what are you doing right now that's paying, and what are you planning to do that's going to pay you dividends in the next, 3-5 years? And what's your end game with all of this?
That's kind of a good question. At the end game, I don't know, because Nick even just brought it up, right? We don't really have any idea how long the podcast is going to go, how long it continues to make sense, right? Like, I think I can't see an end to it right now, and inevitably it will, because
I think there's an evolution to the podcast.
Yes.
I mean, there are some things that in the next 3 to 5 years that may be a shocker of what ends up happening.
Yeah.
Right. So, the final chapter is yet to be written.
Yeah.
Right. And with our businesses, combination of our businesses that we all have. So I don't know if we really can, when everyone's like, what's your 5-year outlook look like? And I hate when people project that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not really wanting. I mean, and I don't know that I necessarily expected you to have an answer to what your end game was, but more so, what are you doing right now to kind of tee up what's going to happen next? I guess maybe that's a better question.
I think the big thing is, like, we've realized that in order for stuff to grow beyond what we've done with it now, there does need to be probably human infrastructure, right? Like, there needs to be a person who helps us get it all put in one place, that pushes the content out other places, that drives people back to our YouTube channel, right? Like, there's a human element to making some of this social media stuff get outside. Sirhan has 14 people on his content creation team.
That's incredible.
14, right?
That's incredible.
And so when you look at his stuff, it obviously takes a small village to do what he does. And he also walks in the room, he holds up a picture, says, new book coming out tomorrow, sets it down, and he's off to the next thing, right? That human piece of leverage is the thing that I would love for all of us to have, because the reality is Brian doesn't post a bunch of stuff, but it's not because there isn't a ton of stuff for him to say. It's he just didn't give a rip about social media from that perspective, right?
Yeah.
He has other things going on, and his day has time that he's doing stuff that's more important to him, right? Like, if we could have somebody dialed in that was moving all that stuff forward, I think that's what takes all of this to the next level from where it's at. Because our physical manpower reach has probably extended us as far as we're going to go for the most part.
I think our next move is the TMZ style of real estate show.
There you go.
like it.
Yeah,
Just doom and gloom all the time.
Yep.
There's definitely more infrastructure that needs to be there. We've talked about that a lot. As far as, like, I think the actual, like, what does the podcast or whatever we do next look like? Like, obviously we need to build out a more robust infrastructure to put together whatever it is that we're trying to do. From an actual content standpoint, same reason, going back to, like, Nick saying, like, he hates the 5-year question. I do too, only because, like, our philosophy always has been and always will be, like, everything that's come into our world that's been good is because we've been really, really focused on just giving everything that we can give to other people without really expecting much in return, right? Like, if you listen to the podcast, you pretty much get an idea of how a few $100 million real estate teams run, like down to the studs. Like, we say stuff on there, we talk about stuff on there that other people might consider to be almost proprietary information. You know what I mean? Like, we've done it in our live shows. We've done it in our training events. We've talked about taking the podcast kind of on tour almost and helping other people grow. Like, what that's done for us, I know it'll be super rad.
Kind of cool.
And what that's done for us is every good thing that's happened, whether it's in our business or in the podcast, is because we've built relationships with people. And we found that the most organic way to build relationships with people is take the strengths that you have and the knowledge that you have and not try to monetize it right out of the gate, but just help other people. And when you're helping out the other people, like, turns out people end up watching your show and listening to your podcast and reaching out to you and wanting to be in business with you. And, like, that's why our businesses have done so well, is because we've helped people without saying, like, this is a recruiting appointment or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we're just always there to help other people grow.
Well, you come from a culture of sharing and paying it forward and all of that. And I like your point about, you sharing your strategies and not keeping things proprietary. You think you have something proprietary to yourself.
Right.
And you share all of those things. And I think that's really important, because there's a lot of realtors out there who's like, oh, I can't share that. I can't talk about this.
Yeah.
That's absurd.
Strategy. I got to keep this close to the vest.
We all know
right?
people like that.
We all come up with the stuff, you know. I mean, there's
nothing new out there. That no one's doing different.
There's no secret.
What Matt's doing is not new. It's been used multiple times in our industry. It's used in other industries. It's like nothing's new. Everything is duplicatable and replicatable if people are willing to do the work.
Yep.
There's no such thing as proprietary in this. Even the software. Like, I've got this amazing tech that it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah.
Right.
I actually had that conversation with a realtor, and I'm thinking,
Did you?
Of course.
How many times have we heard that, bro?
Well, guys, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah.
This is a big deal for me, and I was really excited to have you guys on the show. It's always fun to spend time with you. And again, I thank you so much for taking time out today. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Spilling the LT. Again, I'm your host, Tamera Gaede. Make sure that you go on to not just mine, but their podcast as well. Make sure that you're liking, sharing, and subscribing so that you can keep up with all things real estate. Guys, make it a great day.